Hello, this is Ron Clymer, and I am with First Real Estate School in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And I'm out here on the shores of the beautiful Pacolet River, just to give me a little background. But I want to tell you what's on the North Carolina Real Estate exam. Now you're probably wondering, Ron, wait a minute, I thought that was confidential. It's not confidential, it's right here. It's in this booklet called the Real Estate Licensing in North Carolina. Now, where did I get this booklet? I got it from the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, and you can too. Go to their website at www.ncrec.gov, G-O-V, and you can download it. And it tells you everything you need to know about the exam, especially what's on it. Now, on page 16, it says Examination Content Outline. And it tells you exactly what's on the test. It tells you there's 6 questions about agency. You better be studying that. It tells you now by the way, does everybody realize there's 2 sections to the exam? There's the general section, which is basically the national section, and then there's the North Carolina section, which is the state stuff. Well, the national stuff is 6 questions on agency, 8 questions on general legal principles, theory and concepts about contracts. They want you to know about unilateral contracts, bilateral contracts, what makes a valid contract or invalid, void and voidable, know the difference between those 2 words. Notice of delivery and acceptance, how that works, electronic signatures. They want you to know about purchase contracts between buyers and sellers. There's 7 questions about that. General principles, options, basic provisions, offer and acceptance, how to terminate an offer, service listing contracts, contracts between the licensee and the seller. There's 7 questions about that. The duties and obligations of each party. Bundle of legal rights, only 1 question. Types of ownership. Joint tenancy, tenancy in common, who gets your share when you're dead, and there's only 2 questions about that. Leasehold interest, there's 1 question about that. Forms of business ownership, 1 question about that. Sole proprietor, corporation, that sort of stuff. Private restrictions, liens, easements, leases, encroachments, deed conditions, property owners, HOA. So there's 4 questions about that. Government power and control of land use. Zoning, different federal and state regulations that control our land use. 4 questions about that. There's 4 questions about basic concepts such as what is equity? What is loan-to-value ratio? Terms and payments of principal and interest. You need to be able to compute interest. What are discount points? Why do they exist? Methods of financing. 3 questions about that. FHA, VA, conventional, land contract, contract for deed. Financing instruments, documents. There's 2 questions about that. Legal principles involved there. Some questions about different rules like RESPA, Regulation Z, Truth in Lending, Sherman-Clayton Antitrust Act. 4 questions about all of those. Lending process, 1 question about that. Legal description, 1 question about that. 1 question about legal description. Don't become a surveyor in class because there's only 1 question about it. Methods of measurement, how many square feet in a 200 by 300 foot lot. There's only 1 question about that, or how many square feet in a house that's 40 feet by 60 feet. Only 1 question about that. Property valuation, there's 3 questions about that. What's the difference between a broker price opinion and a appraisal? Methods of valuation, sales comparison approach, cost approach, and the income analysis approach. 3 questions about that. 6 questions about conveying property. Deeds, documents that convey property, wills, court-ordered sales. Property advertising, how we're allowed to advertise, 3 questions about that. Fair housing, You need to know the 7 protected classes, the Fair Housing Act of 1968, the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Be sure you know the difference between those. 4 questions about that. Block busting, redlining, steering, testing your knowledge of that. 8 questions about property management. You may never manage a property, but you better get some knowledge about it, because you got 8 questions on the North Carolina real estate exam about it. Real estate calculations, 13 questions about calculations. You know, if people say, oh, this math is so hard. Well, I got some good news for you. If you're watching this video, over in the margin on YouTube, there's some of my math videos. I got all the math that's on the North Carolina exam on YouTube. There's absolutely none of it. In fact, if you see something that I don't have on there, give me a call. I'll put it on there. But there's no reason you should be missing this math. You got time to sit and watch the video. You don't have to raise your hand in front of a room full of 20 strangers and tell them you don't know how to do it. Just hit rewind. So watch my videos. Compensation, commissions, valuation, net to seller. You got to be able to do that. Tax, prorations. Now, by the way, as of May 2016, they took doing a closing statement off the exam. Well, I'm glad to hear it, but don't forget, you still have to do the prorations. You still have to do the net to the seller. There's still things to do. So, by the way, y'all remind me to come back to page 19. You can't remind me. I'm here by myself. I'll remember. 2 questions on what you have to do to get a real estate license. License categories and statuses. What's the difference between a broker, a provisional broker, a non-resident commercial broker? Make sure you understand that. 1 question about broker in charge. 1 question about the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. Man, if I had to guess, I would guess what's their purpose. 2 questions about license administrative things like proof of licensure, change of name, continuing education, post-license education, making sure you understand how that works. Agency contracts and practices with that in North Carolina, not just in general, but in North Carolina. Agency disclosure in North Carolina, not in general, in North Carolina. Dual and designated agency, once again, in North Carolina. Selected practices such as advertising, delivering instruments and stuff like that. Drafting of legal instruments, make sure you know we're not allowed to do that. Trust accounts, there's only 1 question about that, but make sure you at least understand what a trust account is. Brokerage fees and compensation. Well, I figure if you can't compute a commission, you probably wouldn't be in real estate school in the first place, but I've been wrong. Prohibited practices, things we can't do, like lie, cheat, and steal, and a whole bunch of stuff here on page 21 about that. And 1 question about timeshare. 2 questions about property taxation. 2 questions about sales contracts and practices. Closing procedures. There's only 1 question about that. Laws governing residential tenancies. That would be tenancies with leasehold estates. Residential square foot guidelines. There's only 1 question about that, but be sure you. And there's 2 questions about basic home construction. Federal income taxation with home ownership, only 1 question. Residential loan qualifications, make sure you know how to qualify for a loan. And comparative market analysis calculation, 1 question. CBS, CIA, if y'all remember that from being in my class. They tell you here on the national section of the exam, you need 71 out of the 100 questions. On the state section, the North Carolina section, you need 29 out of 40. So that's what you need. If you haven't read this book, Real Estate Licensing in North Carolina, it's free from the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. You go to their website at www.ncrec.gov. You can download it. You can also download a syllabus for the course that you have to take. Now, if you're anywhere near Hendersonville, we would love it if you'd come to First Real Estate School. We got the lowest tuition in town, we got the best instructor in town. What more could you ask? So check us out at First Real Estate School. No matter where you go to school, get this book, and no matter where you go to school, you watch my videos right here on YouTube to help you do the math, because they will help you do the math.